Hello everybody, welcome to News. I'm Jonathan. Chief Executive Mr. John Lee has just delivered his first policy address in the Legislative Council, and his policy address sets out the policy direction of this government in the coming year. I'm sure every one of us in Hong Kong is paying close attention, especially our Legislative Council members. Now, I'm here at the Legislative Council, and I'm going to interview different LegCo members and see what they think about the policy address. Before we begin, please remember to share, like, and subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you. Mr. Yim, the Chief Executive, Mr. John Lee, has just delivered his policy address in the Legislative Council. And as one of the commercial sector's representatives, how would you evaluate his policy address?
Thank you, Jonathan. I think this morning's Chief Executive's policy address is very comprehensive. It covers various topics, including the implementations of one country, two systems, education, youth development, economy, and most important, the integrations into the national development, particularly in relation to the northern metropolis development. I think it is very welcome by the society.
Well, speaking of the northern metropolis, I recognize that you have moved a members' motion back in July this year on interfacing with Shenzhen and planning for joint development of the Shenzhen's Hong Kong Boundary Control Points economic belt. Do you think the Chief Executive has adopted some of your ideas into his policy address? And what expectations do you have on the northern metropolis development in the coming future?
I'm very glad to see that one of the main focus of Chief Executive's policy address includes the developments of northern metropolis. As the new driving force for Hong Kong's future development, we believe that northern metropolis will become one of the main parts for Hong Kong to integrate into the Greater Bay Area. In such regards, areas alongside the Shenzhen River, as well as the other ports economic belt will play the crucial role. And in coming days, we expect that both Hong Kong and Shenzhen governments can join task forces which already set up to further enhance the cooperation work to implement the Shenzhen Hong Kong's boundary control points economic belt development.
So Dominic, our Chief Executive, Mr. John Lee, has just delivered his first policy address in the Legislative Council. And as a legislator from the geographical constituencies, how would you overall evaluate his policy address?
I think this policy address has been a good one. I think in terms of the amount of time, in previous policy address, they usually spend around 2 hours. But then this one, he actually took like 3 hours to finish his complete address. That comes to show you that there are a lot more contents in the address.
Well, I know that you have moved a members' motion back in May this year on reforming the civil service system to enhance government effectiveness. And in the policy address, our Chief Executive particularly pointed out that his government is intent to further improve governance by strengthening the civil service management system.
Yes.
Do you think that the Chief Executive has adopted some of your ideas into his policy address? And in terms of policy execution, what expectation do you have in the coming future?
Yeah, we're very happy that the Chief Executive adopted our the suggestions that we put forth in the motion that we moved in the Legislative Council earlier this year. And particularly, if we take a look at the policy address, the Chief Executive is well aware that the current civil service system needs to be revamped, and particularly they have to reward those performers. And then for those civil servants who are underperforming, they will have to have some consequences, right? So in terms of rewarding those top performers, they are planning to launch this Chief Executive Award for exemplary performance, which is, I think, is a great move. And as well, they're going to provide those possible officers with who have potential, commitment, and outstanding performance, and provide them with more training and advancement opportunities. The Chief Executive also mentioned they're going to have strengthened supervision. So if for a prolonged period of time they're still not performing up to par, then what's going to happen is that they may be terminated. And if substandard performance persists, right? So they're also going to have a disciplinary mechanism in recent years, we see a lot of civil servants engage in activities that are jeopardizing our society and jeopardizing government in general. So a lot of these measures have to do with those. So the government has to take disciplinary action on these people. So I think in general, and with these also comes civil servant college. So increase training and let them know more about our country, more about basic law, know about our country's constitution. I think all of these are definitely great moves that the government is taking, and so I'm very happy with this policy address right here.
Okay, so Eunice, our Chief Executive, Mr. John Lee, has just delivered his first policy address in the Legislative Council. And as a legislator from the Election Committee, how would you overall evaluate his policy address?
I think this policy address is a very special one compared to the previous one. So I think it is a very concrete policy address, including how are we going to attract talents, how are we going to nurture talents from everywhere, not just from the mainland and also from the outside world. How are we going to cope with the outside challenge? I think we can have a pool of talents in Hong Kong. I think this is one of the key, the special feature of the policy address for this year.
I see. So in terms of policy execution, right? So what expectation do you have from this government in the coming future?
I think everyone have a very high expectation for John Lee because now we have a very concrete action plan, and of course the next question will be how are we going to take out all this action and how are we going to carry out and whether we can carry it out on time. Because if you set out all the deliverables here and we as a legislator, I think it's our job or it's our duty to monitor the government. We can take advantage of Hong Kong's as a common law system, and also as a professional myself, we also want to give out our talent or give out our time and to give it back to the society. So I think everyone has a very high expectation.
Surely we have high expectations on Mr. John Lee as well. So Judy, our Chief Executive, Mr. John Lee, has just delivered his first policy address in the Legislative Council. And as a legislator from the Election Committee, how would you overall evaluate his policy address?
Well, first of all, it was very long because the last, I remember the last policy address I attended to, it was roughly about 1 hour and a half, and John's policy address, it was twice the time, double the time. So it took him almost 3 hours to deliver all his ideas. And of course, the overall feeling for me was really much greater than my expectation. And I'm actually quite thankful is that John has really listened to, well, first of all, he has attended many public consultations in the past few months. And not only that he attended, he also listened to everyone's idea. And he took quite a lot of the suggestions that he was provided, he was given in the consultations. Every item in the his policy address is saying chatting a brighter tomorrow for Hong Kong. And when you look into the details, he doesn't only address to the growth for Hong Kong, the economics, or any any bigger subject. He also attend to very detailed subject that is related to people in their daily life.
But Judy, I know that you were also a district councillor before, and in this policy address, the CE has actually put some insight on the district governance, for example. So do you have any insight on that? Particularly the
Yes, well, Jonathan, I have been serving the Southern District for a little bit over 6 years in the District Council. He actually mentioned quite a few ideas regarding the Southern District. The one that we actually have been wanting for quite some time is the Round Island Trail. So we have asked the government to study, the possibility to connecting our Southern District trails to central. So in that way, we can go all the way from Southern District and round the island to Taiwan. And today we have it.
Okay, much more convenient
Yes,
for residents.
today we have it. So it was quite a surprise for me that is finally happening. So that is the first thing for Southern District. And then the second surprise for me was that we talk a lot about the community care team. I'm happy to learn that the Southern District and also the Kwai Chung District are going to be the first two out of the 18 districts to start to operate community care teams. So this is going to be huge for our district, and I'm sure we will do a good show.
That is the reason why setting up a KPI is very important. The efficiency is very important. And people do actually enjoy the results of the government.
KPI is another thing that we need to give John Lee a big credit, because when you listen to his policy address, you realize that he does set out a timeline target for every item. Like I want to achieve this, like by how many percent in the first 3 years, and then how many percent in the next 3 years. He has his vision really solid. So I think his team, his administrations, they have a lot of work to do to reach his KPIs.
I'm sure his administration will deliver good governance. So Jovi, our Chief Executive Mr. John Lee has just delivered his first policy address in the Legislative Council. And as a legislator from the geographical constituencies, how would you overall evaluate his policy address?
As the first policy address from Mr. John Lee, I think it gives a very refreshing outlook and a promising future for people from all walks of life, for the youth as well as for the elderly. As President Xi said in the 1st of July important speech, there are 4 musts and 4 hopes, and I think the new government has integrated Mr. President Xi's important speech into the new policy address. For us, the implementation is the key. We can see that from the new policy address, it has a clear roadmap, as well as 110 key performance indexes in the appendix. So as legislator, we can clearly monitor the implementation of the new policy address, and which is what we're going to do in the Legislative Council.
May I ask, what expectation do you have on the cultural development in the coming future?
So I urge 4 important steps to be taken by the government. First of all, it's the promotion of arts and cultures into the community. And secondly, it's the support for our local talents. Thirdly, we have to foster Hong Kong as the prime destination for major and international events. And fourthly and lastly, we have to commercialize arts and culture so that young people would have more career opportunities. And I'm happy to learn from the new policy address that the CEU has responded to my advocacy with a new Greater Bay Area Cultural and Arts Festival, as well as setting up some new cultural commissions to follow up. And most importantly, I think it's the 10-year development blueprint for arts and cultural facilities. So young people will have more platforms to pursue their career aspiration, to develop their lifelong career in that field. It's definitely one of the soft ways for Hong Kong people, especially the young people, to tell the Hong Kong story and to export our Chinese cultural values.